now about to present the main attraction of our world-famous show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Reign Over Me, the Atlanta Reign podcast. As always, I am your host, Shy Guy, and I am joined by my partner in crime, Norcetto. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing real good. I just got back from vacation, some nice
Oh,
R&R over the weekend. I'm ready
Very
to,
nice.
get right back down to business.
Oh yeah. Well, let's jump into it. I think we had a really good week last week, but I think there's a little news before we jump into that.
Yeah, I'd say saying Atlanta had a good week this week is a bit of an understatement, but we will get to that momentarily because, like you said, we do have one small kind of news item to go over real quick, and that is ATL Academy making their newest signing to replace Dogman. He got called up to the big leagues. They needed someone to come in and fill that spot, and we have found out just a couple of days ago that is going to be a Korean player who goes by the name of PERFACT.
Yeah, perfect. And this is a bizarre pickup. I don't think anybody saw this coming because, as we know, Dogman is a support, a flex support. He plays Zenyatta mainly, and some Ana. And Perfect is he's coming from Contenders Pacific, like you said, a Korean player from Hong Kong Attitude. And I've heard great things, but he is a DPS player, a hit scan player. So it's very strange. He's also the first non-American that's going to be on the team. But yeah, it seems like Saucy, who previously was on the Zarya and was a DPS main until the GOATS meta, is going to be flexing over to off support, and Perfect is going to be filling one of the DPS roles if we're not playing GOATS.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting setting, and one, like you said, I don't think a whole lot of people would have called before it actually happened. It'll be very interesting to see how Saucy kind of handles that transition, going to a brand new role. I'm confident that he'll be able to pick that up pretty quickly.
Yeah, Saucy's a very talented player, and he's shown a little bit of ability to flex around during last season. So yeah, I have high hopes.
For sure. And I mean, if the meta right now kind of stays the same as it has been for at least a little while longer, I expect to see a fair amount of Perfect on the Zarya again. So I'm excited to see that new addition, what kind of dynamic it brings to the team, because like you said, this guy is definitely a very talented player. I think I looked earlier, I think he's only 16 years old right now. So bringing over a really young player like that is an interesting move for the academy team, and one that I like. They seem to really be investing in the youth movement there. You've already got Sugar Free on the roster as well, so just kind of rounding out with a DPS duo that won't be able to play in Overwatch League for another 3 years or something.
Yeah, until we hit season 5 for sure.
But yeah, I think their first game is tomorrow night, if I'm not mistaken. We're recording this on Tuesday, so they're about to get their season underway. I'm excited to see how they kind of follow up what was a really great run in their very first season. Last year, and we'll see if they can keep that momentum rolling.
Right, exactly.
Oh, and I guess speaking of momentum,
yes, let's get to it.
Let's get to the good stuff. This is why we're here, and this is why we are so happy to be doing this episode this week. Because if somehow anybody listening was not aware, in this past week of Overwatch League, Atlanta came out and just absolutely steamrolled the Paris Eternal 4-0.
Beat the crap out of them.
It was not even particularly close. I mean, going into this week, both of us were predicting a really, really tight matchup. And we both had Atlanta coming out on top of the end. but there is no way anyone was predicting anything quite like this.
No one saw this coming. Paris was one of the only undefeated teams next to Vancouver and New York, and yeah, they were. So many people had said that they had one of the strongest 3-3 comps in the league. They were so good at playing together. They were so tight that they looked really good. Now, in retrospect, looking at everything, they had only played a couple of games. They hadn't played often, but when they did play, they looked really good. So a lot of people expected a lot out of them, and it seemed like they wanted to roll into the week and just kind of take us down. And Atlanta had other plans. It looks like they had studied the tapes very well, and Paris couldn't do anything to stop them.
No, I mean definitely, and I mean I like the point that you just made about how it seemed like Atlanta was so well prepared for this game, because you could see throughout the match that at kind of every turn they were just completely like stifling whatever Paris was trying to do. It wasn't just that like Atlanta was dominated; it was that like specifically they were seeing the plays that Paris was kind of going for and snuffing them out before they even got going. The one that really kind of sticks out in my mind, because they talked about it several times on the broadcast, was the way that Massa was just like completely shutting Cruz down on the opposite side, not giving him any opportunities to go for those kind of huge boot plays that are so like crucial right now. It was really impressive to watch.
And there were several of those boops and pulls and everything, not only from Massa but also from Pokpo, which started on, you ready for the segue, on Ilios, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like it. I like it. And I really liked Ilios because it was ultimately a 2-0 for Atlanta on this map. The very first stage was very strange. We started out on ruins, and Paris tried to roll out with this strange like Symmetra composition rather than having Finzi run his typical diva and playing into the 3-3 matchup that was supposed to kind of be their bread and butter. They tried to go off script a little bit, and it just did not work at all.
Nope, didn't work. I mean, they were either not taking Atlanta seriously or trying something sneaky to surprise them. But either way, no, it didn't work at all. Atlanta was able to not only shut this comp down for, I think they held onto the Symmetra like 2 or 3 pushes, but they took them to the end. Once Atlanta took the point, I don't even think Paris got close.
Yeah, I think like they barely touched at the very end, but they never got anywhere near like flipping it back over and building any percent of their own on ruins. It was just like domination from start to finish. They were consistently managing to get a lot of picks even without ultimates in a lot of these fights. I mean, I remember one in particular that was like really cool for me to see, because it showed me how much this team has already kind of adapted and gotten better over time. They managed to pick off Bin Best thanks to, once again, Massa coming up with a huge boop. And Dafran had a grab ready to go and waiting, but he holds onto it. Was so much more patient with his grabs, I think, in this series than we've seen in any of Atlanta's other games so far, and it really showed that they were very disciplined in this game.
Yeah, that's a really good point about that. I think my favorite thing to watch is, as you were pointing out, Massa was going crazy, and I think something about Massa is whenever you talk to him about like who he wants to play up against and who he wants to be matched up against, generally he enjoys playing against other European players. And it seemed like when he went up against Cruz, it was his mission to not only dominate Cruz but dominate the entire Eternal, just because they are a European team and he wanted to flex on them. And I'm gonna look for that going forward in upcoming versus like Big Goose and Shaz. I want to see this, and I want to see how Massa does. But yeah, like you said, like huge boops on Bin Best and others like off the edge on Ruins, which is something you don't often see. That's not generally where you see the boops. It's usually more on Well. But just every time they were out of position, Massa would be there to get the boop.
Yeah, he was so good, and the entire team was really really good about just punishing positional mistakes from Paris the entire game, especially with those kind of displacement plays. And we saw even more of that when we headed over to Well, where once again, Dafran broke out the Torbjorn, but here the thing that I thought was probably the most impressive from Atlanta was Popo on Well, and the way he was using those halts to get those environmental kills. I mean, it's a very dangerous thing to play around with if you are Paris in that situation, and they did not seem to handle it very well.
Yeah, for a team that was so highly lauded for their team play and being able to position well, there was every time they stepped out of position that it was exploited, and it happened a lot. They were not playing in safe places. They were getting booped. They were getting pulled, and yeah, they were manhandled again. Now on Well, Paris did a lot better. They did eventually come back and take the point and take it to 99%. And almost won it down to a split second where I think Dafran was able to touch on a tracer. But yeah, like you said, with things they've learned and stuff, one or two picks here and there, Atlanta was still able to kind of calmly put the pieces back together and turn fights. In that last fight, it could have gone either way, but even with the picks, Atlanta kind of slow and steady. I think Popo came back on that Hammond to get back to the point, and they were able to really pull it back together and flip it.
Yeah, the French tracer there in that last fight, especially, I think was really really huge. Obviously for the ability to kind of get back into the fight quickly, but he creates so much chaos, especially when Paris at the very end is kind of one by one trying to stream onto the point and keep it going for a little bit longer, get their respawns back. His ability to close things out there at the very end was absolutely massive. And I do want to point out, we are now we've seen Atlanta play Ilios Well 3 times at this point. And every single time they've rolled out with the Torbjorn, and every single time they have won at least the first fight off of the back of that pick.
It's not a troll pick. It's not a troll pick at all. And one cool part to go off the that I really like about seeing Dafran come back on that tracer is that in a meta where you don't see tracer a lot, and having someone like Dafran, that's one of his specialist characters, it opens up the opportunities for these huge late game clutch plays where he's able to swap over to someone he's really, really good at and potentially swing the game. So it's really, even though we're not seeing tracer a lot in the standard play, to have someone like that be able to swap and get back quick and make those huge hero plays is something really cool and something I want to keep an eye on.
Yeah, we'll have a chance to touch on that a little bit more because I think he even had a better example of that kind of play later on in the series on Route 66. So we'll get into that a little bit more. But from Ilios, after taking a pretty dominant first map and looking very strong, we headed over to Hollywood where things are a lot more kind of traditional. This is where we expected like the full-on 3-3 matchup to come out, and this is where people probably expected Paris to start kind of taking advantage and kind of separating themselves from Atlanta, but like the exact opposite happened here.
Yeah, it was really great to watch, and another show of just really good coordination and team play. Atlanta came in, wrapped around to the back of the point on Hollywood, and just slowly and methodically, they didn't break down. They didn't, try to quickly rush in. They waited it out. They stayed safe and they waited for their opportunity, and it worked. They were able to take point A off of their first push. It just took a long time for them to really get up and going and see the opportunity and take it, which is a huge change over the team we saw against Philly that, was starting to break down after staying alive a little while, and Philly was exploiting it. It looks like Atlanta has learned a lot better how to maintain until they can find those exploitable defenses.
Yeah, I mean, and in this case in particular for that first attack, once again, it was that exploitable weakness was Massa being able to get in behind them, boop and best forward, and allow the team to kind of collapse in on him. So once again, Massa showing up huge here to set up his team and make sure that they can kind of capitalize on any mistakes that Paris are making.
Yeah. And then once once Atlanta was able to take the point and started trying to push through the choke, I can't remember. There was something. Paris was holding up really well in that choke. Tell me what happened. I forgot.
It was, in my opinion, probably the most like entertaining play of this young Overwatch League season that we got to witness from our man Dafran, from our man Masa, who set it up with the speed boost. Something I've never seen before. I've been watching Overwatch for years at this point, and I have never seen anyone make this play before, where they took the elevator up, the elevator that sits behind point A on Hollywood, well away from the choke point where Paris was holding. And Dafran just like yeets himself over the building and drops in from the sky on top of them with a graviton surge. Oh, it was just beautiful to watch.
Just drops out of the sky. I wish we could hear the comms, because you just hear that classic Dafran laugh. Like when he got done just taking out the team. Who could see that coming? This is one of those plays that, if a team is holding in the choke, they're going to have a diva player kind of keeping an eye up top just in case from now on. But no one had ever seen this. And to just be standing in the choke wondering where your opponent is, and to just see a Zarya with a grab dropping out of the sky. Oh my God, it was hilarious.
It was iconic, and I love the fact that it was that it is Dafran who makes this play, because I think that just kind of lends to his legend a little bit. He is somewhat of a little bit of a mythical figure almost, coming into the league this year. He was a bit of a mystery to some people, and for this to happen in such a huge matchup, such a kind of a marquee game for the league, I think it really kind of lends to his legend and to the status that this team is building as one of the most entertaining in the entire league.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, even if some of the games are close, or some of the fights are close, or whatever, a lot of people think that Vancouver and even New York might be a better consistent team, but for the ability to have just huge plays and swing fights and individual talent, and on so many other metrics, Atlanta takes it, and they're just so entertaining to watch. I did want to point out that yes, Dafran is the one who made this play, but it was a Redditor, I think, named or a streamer named, I think, My Crazy Cat, that actually first came up or discovered this or came up with this. And there's been a big push to kind of make sure that he gets the credit, because as Masa said in the post-game interview, they saw it on Reddit.
That's brilliant. I love that. Something like that can make its way from some dude like screwing around with his favorite hero and make its way into the Overwatch League as like a legitimate strategy. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. Time and a place for trick plays to be tried and stuff. And when they get pulled off well like that, they like you said, they become iconic. But yeah, we were able to push through off of that amazing play, and just kind of kept marching. It was a slog a little bit, but Atlanta was able to kind of keep pushing till the end.
And they were pretty consistent. I mean, they lost a couple of fights along the way to get slowed down, but marched right on down to point C on Hollywood, finished with over 2 minutes remaining in their time bank, which is just a disgusting pace on Hollywood to be able to finish with that much time. And they continued to kind of punish the mistakes from Paris. I want to credit Atlanta a lot for how they played, but on this map in particular, there were just so many like careless mistakes coming out from Paris. Like their support ultimates were overlapping a lot of the time. There was one huge play that allowed Atlanta to push almost to the very end of the map, where Soon like weirdly got caught out completely on his own for no reason, and like it was just it looked like Paris was just having a very off day. And, I don't say that at all to take away from what the Reign were able to do, because they were the ones kind of forcing those mistakes. But, I think there was, it just wasn't all quite there for Paris in this match.
Right. If Paris is showing up and Atlanta showing up, you have potentially a map 5. This was Atlanta showing up and Paris not. And it definitely showed, because even on Ilios, like, they just a lot of positioning errors with the ability to get booped and stuff like that. That's just knowing where to be, and yeah, it seemed like they just, we're not playing up to the level that they had been touted at. But on attack, they did show a little bit of signs of life. They kind of did the same thing Atlanta did, where it was a slow, methodical first push, and they were able to win that first fight after some time to take the point. And there was a little bit of life in Paris, and I for one thought, okay, this is Paris is coming to life. We're going to see them start to push back, and Hollywood might be an interesting map. But no.
Not really. I mean, like, Atlanta just responded immediately. Yeah, they lost that first fight, but they got so aggressive from that point forward. We're holding, at times almost right near the Paris spawn doors for point B, and they whittled down what was like an insane time bank. Paris had, I think, like 4 or 5 minutes to work with for point B, and ultimately only captured it out in overtime, I believe.
Yeah. Well, no, they didn't actually end up capturing B.
Oh, that's right. They didn't even capture B.
No, what would they actually? They almost did. They won the second to last fight, and Atlanta had to back off. And Atlanta came out and contested right at the end, and they were able to take it. Because I remember, because my favorite part of those last fights, right, and this is where the fight ended, was in front of that door, was Pokpo and Ben Best having their own little duel over by the Mega at the back of the map. And just Pokpo flexes on Ben Best with a solo shatter, charges him into the wall to take him out. It was nuts.
Yeah, it got very chaotic. And now that you said, I remember the fight, because Daco got a double kill off a self-destruct. Yep. To kind of save Atlanta a little bit in that situation. They were on the back foot to an extent there, and that kind of flipped everything on its head, completely separated Paris, like you said, got Ben Best, in that 1v1 battle that he eventually lost. And
that dirty shatter, it was hilarious. I loved it.
And Atlanta closed out Hollywood. Like that defense on point B is just absolutely astonishing. To be able to hold at that first choke point for so long like they did is a really good sign for Atlanta when they can do that against a team that everyone considered perhaps the best in the league at this the current meta in the 3-3 composition. So the fact that they can go toe to toe with them and really kind of dominate them is such an incredible sign.
Absolutely, and especially that they can pull off plays like the good old Dafran yeet while doing it. But yeah, after Kings Row, so let's just keep a tally here. After 2 maps, Atlanta has racked up 5 points between 2 maps, and Paris has 1. Mm-hmm. So let's move on to Temple of Anubis, where it doesn't get much better for Paris. We actually rolled out on offense, and we had Soon on the Bastion defense on Anubis.
Yeah, I think I don't think anybody would have expected that, and I'm not sure it's something that Paris probably even imagined themselves playing. I think if they had been kind of dominating the series in the way that a lot of people predicted, they probably would have stuck with 3-3 on Anubis. But maybe they felt a little with their backs against the wall. They needed to try something different to change things up, and they turned to the Bastion, and to their credit, it was pretty successful.
Yeah, it did. It held Atlanta for a while. I mean, it started getting to the end there where it looked like they may be able to actually hold them off. Soon was very well protected. Now, he was the lone source of DPS in that comp. It was all built around him. So when he did finally fall, that was pretty much the first domino. But there was some misplay, it looked like, from Pokpo on the Hammond, where he just kind of slammed into a wall here and there, just kind of bounced around, pinballed around a little bit. But regardless, they were able to finally move in and take Soon out. That started the dominoes falling, and they took point A after some work. It took some work to get through that Bastion.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those things where you kind of need to build up to some ultimates a little bit in order to break through that very kind of strong wall that Paris was building up around the bastion. You've got to get your dive in there properly, and eventually Atlanta was able to do that. I mean, when they finally took the point, they came in with the primal rage from Popo, with Erster, who was playing the Hammond on point A, came in with the mines, and Daco had a self-destruct, and they finally just were able to overwhelm the defense of Paris a little bit, and push through. And once they were able to kind of crack that nut, it was all downhill from there.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much to say about point B other than Atlanta struggled, took point A, and then walked to point B and took it. I mean, they pretty much just used that momentum, rolled on to B, and took care of Paris. And what else is there really to say? Paris didn't have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, and I want to give a shout out to Dogman here, because he was the one that kind of opened everything up for Atlanta on that second point. He helped get the DMEC onto Finzi before Hip was able to use his transcendence. Dogman responded with a trans of his own, and then as soon as it was over, solo kills Cruz as he's wall riding up around the pillars and whatnot, just trying to be sneaky. And that was what kind of opened the door for Atlanta to just bulldoze their way through it.
Yeah, Dogman, since he got pulled up and has been playing, has been just amazing for these huge clutch plays. He's been fantastic for clutching it out, and just you'll randomly see him pop up 3 times on a kill feed, and he's the reason why a point secured. So, but yeah, we off the back of him, we were able to take point B. Now, if Dogman was the reason for us pushing through and taking point B or attack, defense lies on the back of Erster on the Junkrat, in my opinion.
Oh, I loved this so much, because this is something that we haven't seen any teams really be trying in season 2 of OWL, but this is a composition that was a staple on Anubis last year. Every team needed to be running Junkrat on Anubis, or you were just going to get bulldozed at times. And Erster put up one heck of a performance.
I mean, just everything you would want from a Junkrat. You got multi-kills, you got kills from your cannon, you got kills from your mine, you got Riptire kills. I mean, I know at one point he threw a mine just over a shield and killed 2 supports just on his own. But even at the end, when Paris was finally trying to make a move and pushed point A, and they had killed Erster, he was able to pop a Riptire from back towards spawn, make it to the point, and take out Reinhardt and Brig in a huge play to save the point. It was so much fun watching him on that Junkrat, and I forgot how much fun it is just to watch the crazy Australian bomb man go nuts on another team.
Yeah, I mean, when the pros could get their hands on Junkrat and they're flying all over place with the concussion mines, using him, as a super mobile hero, which I don't necessarily think most people associate Junkrat and mobility most of the time. He's usually sitting behind an Orisa shield, just kind of spamming away. But Erster was all over the place, trying to get up to the high ground, taking weird angles to fire shots off, and he was a god in this map in particular. And you pointed out how they brought it back when he died. He came through with that Riptire almost from spawn, but the thing that kind of enabled him to respawn and get that tire to come in was a really good heads up play by Popo, who as soon as Erster goes down, drops that supercharger, which kind of holds Paris back the entire time. They can't really push into that. There's just too much damage for them to deal with. So it didn't get any kills off of it, but it wasted so much of that time and allowed Erster to get back into the fight, and eventually pull off the full hold on Anubis to close out the series, grab a 3-0 victory, and just I think kind of demoralize Paris a little bit.
God, yeah. I mean, I can only imagine being considered one of the top teams in the meta, number 3 in the rankings, to let's look at the score again. 7-1 at this point in the day. 3 maps in, 7 points on Atlanta side to 1. And that was their that one opening fight on Hollywood for Paris. It had to have been just embarrassing at that point.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think I believe it was Monty who was casting this game, and he made a really good point that when Atlanta comes out on this composition, what they're essentially doing is they're daring Paris to come play dive. Like, can you play dive into what we are bringing? Because that's how you get around this. That's how you deal with the Widowmaker. That's how you deal with the Junkrat. Is you get right up in their face, and Paris just did not show that level of flexibility to be able to go back over to a composition that hasn't really been in the meta for a while, and Atlanta definitely exploited that.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's multiple times that we've been talking about this map or this match tonight. Like huge plays from Dogman, from Erster, from Dafran, from Massa, but also like I think the coaching staff really shone through on this series with such tight coordination, team play, strategies all across the board. Like I think so much credit needs to go to the coaching staff for this 4-0.
Most definitely. I am right there with you. They seem to have Paris figured out from the get-go in this series, and it was never really going any other way. So a lot of that comes down to the prep that this team was able to put in, and you see what happens when they can focus on one team in a week and really put all their attention to a single opponent. It really opens the door for them to do some really unique things, to have those kind of pocket plays and have those strategies that really break down what your opponent is trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we took the win there and moved over to Route 66 to finish it out. Now, Route 66 was kind of funny because we started on attack, and you could kind of tell that I'm not going to say they didn't care, but it seems like they were excited to have already won, and it took them a while to fall back into their serious groove.
That's definitely true. I think this is something we've seen all across the league. I mean, both last year and this year, is those 3-0s that inevitably turn into 3-1s when the winning team kind of lets their foot off the gas maybe just a little bit. But credit to Atlanta here. They did start slow, but once they got going, there really once again was not a whole lot stopping them.
No, if I remember correctly, they pushed point A and finally capped the first point in overtime. So they didn't have a lot of time to work with going into points B and point C, but they just kind of kept marching. Just kind of like, it's like right before the time ran out, before point A, they kind of got in the groove and realized, oh yeah, we're still playing. We shouldn't let them off the hook. We need to get this 4-0. Let's go back and do what we were doing before. And it's like it went from uncoordinated, not really having a plan, back to exactly what we had seen the first three maps. And once again, Paris didn't know what to do to stop it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and crucially, in order to get to that point where they got that momentum back on their side, they once again needed Dafran to break out the tracer. We talked about it earlier, but on the end of their point A attack, Dafran swapping over to the tracer to get back into the fight really helped them close that one out. When things got hectic and when the fight started breaking down, he was all over the place, securing kills and making sure that Atlanta was going to be able to push through A and keep that payload moving for a little while longer, give them a chance to close out the map. Because if they had gotten full held there, then we're looking at a 3-1 here instead of a 4-0. But those clutch plays came through time and time again.
Yeah, absolutely. And when Paris got the chance to go on offense, they looked good. It looked like Paris was finally coming to life a little bit. But the funny part is, even with Paris playing probably the strongest they had played all day, pushing all the way through points A and B, they still got shut down. And even with Atlanta struggling a little bit, even with them starting to come to life, they still couldn't fully finish a map. And Atlanta got the 4-0 off of that.
Yeah, to completely shut down Paris at the point where they had kind of started to show a little bit of life is a very good sign for Atlanta to be able to kind of buckle down in a situation like that, close out a series, even when the map itself doesn't mean a whole lot outside of your map differential, which could be important down the line. But to be able to keep the focus like that is very encouraging as an Atlanta fan, and they looked really, really impressive. I mean, I think Dogman on this map in particular had a very, very good showing here. He was consistently finding opening picks for them and getting crucial kills mid-team fight. He really, to me, seems to thrive when things kind of start to break down a little bit. All it takes is just a tiny little opening for him to find someone, and he can punish it. And he has really come on strong, over the course of the few games. I think he's been good from the start, but the amount that he has improved, I think, goes a long way to telling you or to kind of explaining the upgrade in performance from Atlanta.
Yeah, he's. I mean, I'm sad that we're not seeing as much of Kodak, but it looks like Dogman is just busting it to be performing as well as he is. And I think we're still going to see Kodak here and there, but anytime they feel like Dogman's the right person to play with how well he's been doing, there have been several points, several maps that he has been the deciding factor on, and it's been incredibly impressive.
Yeah, I mean, this was the first time where we didn't see any substitutions in that regard. We didn't see Kodak at all in this series, but his presence was not necessary when Dogman was popping off like he was. So I'm sure we will continue to see Kodak moving forward, and especially as we perhaps move into some different metas going forward. I think he will continue to have his place on this team. But for now, Dogman, seems to be the one who has kind of taken control there and is really, making his presence felt on this team right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, so we 4-0 Paris. We are, by many people, ranked number 3 in the league. Some people say number 4. They put the Shock above us. And we're, looking, we still have Gladiators coming up this week, and then 2 games in a row with, Chengdu and Houston. So do you think that's fair? Do you think Atlanta is a number 3 team?
I mean, in my estimation, they absolutely are. Like you said, they are right there with San Francisco at this point in terms of where I have these teams ranked. But I mean, just based on the fact that Atlanta is still sitting with a 1 in that loss column rather than a 2, I think you kind of have to put them a slight step above until they slip up, until something proves otherwise. I think they are the default number 3 at this point, and they are sitting pretty in the standings in terms of giving themselves a really good opportunity to make stage 1 playoffs, to start the season incredibly strong, and to really get out of the gates, which I think is going to be an underrated thing in this season. Last year we had a 40 game season. We had so much time for teams, if they had a slow start in stage 1, you still had 30 games left to play. You still had so much time to catch back up to the rest of the league. This year, you don't really have that luxury. A bad stage can kind of sink you right now, and to get to jump out to a hot start like Atlanta has is really, really good. It's exactly where you need to be. And looking forward, their next 3 games are not against top tier competition right now.
Yeah, I'd say they're against pretty low competition, all things considered. Not to speak lowly of a lot of these teams, but something to consider is that we're going up against the Gladiators this week, and they are, what are they, 1-3, 1-4, something?
They're sitting at 1-4 right now, which
not good. But consider that we just talked about Atlanta and the Shock sitting next to each other. Gladiators' 1 win is against the Shock. Like this number 4, number 3 team, the Gladiators were able to take them down. So while I do think that the Gladiators are struggling a lot, they have some problems, and Atlanta should be able to take them out pretty handily. there's always that chance, man. They beat the Shock, so I just want to. I hope the team, maintains focus and keeps the pedal down, because you can't stop respecting your opponents going forward.
No, and Gladiators especially, like they right now are. If I had to pick one team that I am just like not ready to give up on at all, it is definitely the Gladiators, because they have such immense talent on this team. Like,
Yeah.
they are still working to kind of integrate Decay, who just turned 18 and is now old enough to play. They're trying to work him into the roster, and it hasn't been really smooth so far. They've had some trouble with it. But the kind of peaks for this team are definitely up there with any of the best teams in the league. And it's something we talked about in previous episodes, where even though LA sits in 17th 18th place right now at 1-4, there's still this kind of feeling of parity in the league, where like any team feels like they could beat any other on a given week.
Yeah, it's as the saying goes, any given Sunday,
For
like
sure.
when any day, like a team can show up. Uh, y- and yeah, I think you're right. I think the Gladiators have all the pieces; they just haven't really put them together yet. You also have to remember that they've been without Bishu, who has been struggling with. He's been sick, and yeah, that's a huge part of their team right there. And especially in we haven't seen a lot of Surefour. It's a meta that doesn't really lean itself to his hero pool in a lot of ways. And yeah, it's just been a rough time for the Gladiators. But I think you're right. I think they have all of the tools and pieces there. It's just gonna when are they finally gonna put everything together?
For sure, for sure. And you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but it'll be a nice chance to see Masa get to go up against his countrymen in
Right,
Big
right.
Goose and Shaz. There was a piece that came out from the league, an article where Masa was talking to the writer about how when he was really starting out, Big Goose was one of the players that he studied a lot. A fellow Finnish support, when he was coming up and really trying to improve, Big Goose was one of the players he looked up to and was trying to take cues from. So for the chance to hit for Masa, who actually replaced Big Goose on Giganti when that duo came to the league last year, for him to get the chance to go head to head with them is a really cool experience for him, I'm sure, and I'm definitely pumped to see that matchup.
Yeah, it's like a finished version of the Jonak and Rijehong friendly
Yeah.
rivalry. But yeah, Big Goose, he got called up. He was formerly with Team Giganti, and Masa's the one who took his place. And like you said, he studied Big Goose, and he, like we talked about earlier, he seems to get a fire in him when he's up against other European players, especially other European supports, especially other European Lucios. So I think, yeah, keep an eye on Masa this week. I think he could put on a show. But yeah, unless you have anything else, it's time to ask the question: what do you think the results of this week are going to be?
I think I would be crazy if at this point I tried to pick anything other than Atlanta, and I am absolutely not going to do that. It's got to be a 3-1 for me in this week. I respect Gladiators enough that I do expect them to be able to put up a good fight and be able to perhaps take a map. I believe. Actually, no, we are not the only game that they have to prepare for this week. So
Okay, Guangzhou.
that's a good little thing for us. Their attention will perhaps be kind of divided where ours is not. So, but I still think LA just they have enough people who can pop off at any given time that I'll give them one map in the series.
Yeah, I'm actually right there with you. 3-1 is also my guess. I respect the Gladiators a lot. I think they have it in them to surprise Atlanta. Maybe even if they struggle one map, they'll win the fights that matter the most. But yeah, I think they're fully capable of taking a map off us. But I think it's going to go 3-1 as well. Um, Yeah, I want to see the Gladiators do well. Just again, not against us.
Yeah, they have had a rough go of it so far, and to be fair, I mean they have had a pretty tough schedule early on in this season, and lost a lot of like close games so far. I think they've had, you know, 2 different times. I think they've had 2-1 losses where they were almost able to kind of push it into overtime. It just didn't happen. So they are still an incredibly dangerous team, and not someone that, you know, Atlanta should be overlooking at all.
Yeah, don't sleep on the Gladiators, man. Just it may be 1-4, but that one was against a very competent Shock team. So gotta respect your opponent. Gotta keep the foot on the pedal. Gotta take it seriously.
Most definitely. And well, for now, that is gonna do it for us. It, you know, has been a pleasure covering this wonderful game with you. We had such a good week from the Atlanta Rain. I was so excited to get in here and talk with you about it. So it has been a good time, and you know, thank you to everyone for joining us here today for Reign Over Me. It has been a pleasure bringing you this episode. As always, my name is Shy Guy, on Twitter at ShyGuyOW. Follow the pod at Reign Over Me Pod.
And I am Norcetto. Follow me on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram at Norcetto. And make sure you check out the Game Haus and all of the incredibly talented writers. If you're a fan of another team, there's coverage for literally every team in the league, and every single person writing these articles is a crazy fan for these teams, and you can get great insights into any of them. I've been actually starting to become bigger fans of different teams just from having followed a lot of these people and seeing the passion they put into the work they do. So yeah, definitely, if you have another team besides Atlanta, check out the writers over at the Game Haus for some more insight.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, and have a wonderful week. We will be back next week with our talk of the Rain's game against Gladiators, and previewing week 5 as they try to close out stage 1 strong.
Absolutely. It's going to be a double header, lots to discuss, but we'll save that for next week. Until then, let it rain.
I want to play you another one.
Really? Yes. Really? Yes. Yes.
I want to play you another one.
Really?